Hey, so you're DMing the upcoming game for Billy Bob Joe Shamadoo, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I represent him, and I have a few demands that I think actually are non-negotiable. So he wants unlimited snacks. He wants to have unlimited bathroom breaks. Sometimes, if he drinks a lot of soda or beer, he's got a small bladder. He wants to make sure he can pee anytime he wants. Also, he wants no less than 5 different potential romantic partners in the game. I mean, we could talk contract negotiations as far as compensation. I'm going to wait till you give an offer on that before we really, go there. Ball's in your court, sir.
We're talking about player agency, right? Not an agency for players.
Wait. What?
We're talking player agency on JNJtabletop.
I think I need to go find my client. Well, hello there, everybody. I'm Jake from JNJtabletop, and alongside me, as usual, is Josh from JNJtabletop. So,
Hello.
Yeah, we're going to talk about player agency today. It's a very, very popular topic, very important topic to Dungeons and Dragons games, and it's like almost like a buzzword, like it gets thrown around a lot. So, when someone's talking about agency in Dungeons and Dragons, Josh, what would that mean to you? What does that mean?
I think in the lens of D&D, the game, I think player agency is also kind of a synonym for like freedom. How much freedom of choice do you have in the game? Do your decisions matter? Are you able to just go into a place and do certain things that you want to do, or is the DM gonna make you do one thing, or he's you could say you're gonna do whatever you want, and he's not gonna really have it make a difference. I think it kind of ties into like you've all heard it, railroad versus sandbox, which is just, is your game on rails? It's going in one particular direction, or is it a sandbox where you're in a world and you can say and do whatever you want, and the game is what you make of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of ties in there.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, if you will. Yeah. So, I think that's really cool, and I think because I saw that. So, I think if you have good player agency, if players feel like they have agency in the game, they feel like the decisions they make matter, and there actually is a very small little section in the Dungeon Master's Guide that I'm just going to read. It's a few sentences, and it's under the chapter of creating good adventures or something to that effect. And it's a little thing called Heroes Who Matter. It says, an adventure should allow the adventurer's actions and decisions to matter. Though it might resemble a novel or a TV episode, an adventure needs to allow for more than one outcome. Otherwise, players can feel as if they've been railroaded, or set onto a course that has only one destination, no matter how hard they try to change it. For example, if a major villain shows up before the end of the adventure should allow for the possibility that the heroes might defeat the villain. So, how would you go about, or how do you approach a situation as a dungeon master if you're going to create an adventure? Like, what kind of things do you look for when you're trying to create player agency?
Okay, it's a good question. So when I write an adventure, or when I try to plan an adventure, I kind of build things around NPCs and situations. So I will I'll set up like a situation. I'll be like, okay, I know that this is going to happen. I don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be. So I might know that. I'm not going to give a specific. I might know that you guys are going to go into something, but I don't have anything planned for like, okay, they're going to go in, they're going to say this, and then I'm going to say this, and then there's going to be combat. If you guys want to fight someone, you could fight them. If you want to converse with them, you could just talk to them. And on the NPC side of things, I think you could set yourself up better for player agency to kind of like stay away from that, where you're making outcomes and things of the sort by just making NPCs, focusing on all your hard work on these NPCs, where whether they're a villain or just major players, know what their motivations are and know how they're going to react to certain things.
Yeah.
And that way, regardless of what the players do, you're not going to be too thrown off by, well, you'll always be thrown off by what the players do, let's be real. But you'll at least have an idea of how your NPCs will react to it, and you won't be as like put in a corner and stuck as you would be if you hadn't planned for that.
Yeah. I could think back to some of my first experiences being a DM, and I feel like, at least in my mind, I just kind of felt like, all right, I'm going to like write this epic story and the players will get to kind of, I guess almost like a video game, like you just handle the combat along the way, sort of in a way.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that the NPCs, I think, yeah, focusing on the players involved in the story that are not controlled by the players involved, or the characters, I should say, and environments, right? So if you're gonna make a fun environment to adventure in, I mean, you don't know how the players are gonna interact with that. I mean, you could have a whole bunch of cool things set for this one corner of a dungeon, and maybe for whatever reason the description you give doesn't grab the player in to interact with it. And I don't know, you can just always kind of save that for another adventure or another thing for later, just kind of stick it on the shelf.
Yeah, I love that. Like when you have this thing planned that like you want to do or whatever, you think the players are going to do something and then they don't do it. It's not like you lost that. It's exactly what you said. You just put that on the shelf, and now if it ever comes up again, you probably had more time to think about it. It's probably even better than it was originally.
Okay, so it sounds to me like if you were going to create player agency, create an environment, and give the players options and prepare for more than one outcome, like the DM guide says, that sounds like you should have consequences to the decisions that are made. I mean, right? Real life has consequences. So
sure.
What would you try to do to prepare some consequences? Or is that something you think of ahead of time, or is that something like when the player does something you just kind of roll with it and kind of like yes and or yes but?
Yeah. I think I pretty much just roll with it. That's kind of what I try to do.
And you're talking ROLE, right? Not ROLL.
Talking like a little bit of both, depends on what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I guess you could do both.
But it's I have tried to plan for things like a video game where it's like, okay, here's an NPC, they're gonna meet him, like that's the definite. But if they do this, then this happens. If they do this, then that happens. It's just crazy. Nobody has time for that.
No, you're not making a video game.
Yeah, exactly.
You're playing D&D.
So I like to kind of just roll with it, see what happens. But the big thing I think is kind of what you said with consequences. It is just if they do something, even if it's a small thing, just try to make it matter. Because like my first time DMing, I remember that Blake said like, I want to try to do this, and it was just something that like in my mind as a DM had absolutely no connection to the story or anything at all. I knew that it didn't do anything. It was kind of just whatever, it was something he was trying to try. And I remember saying like, okay, yeah, you did that. And that was it. But I think that there are much better ways to go about that. So if you want something to matter to a player, if a player is trying to do something, if they're saying my character does this, if you want to make that matter to them, if you want to feel like their decisions actually affect the world, even if it's something as simple as like I'm thinking of season 1 Critical Role. Right, at one point they're in the Underdark, and somebody throws like a bucket of bolts on the ground. He could just say like, yeah, you did that, whatever, because it doesn't really matter. But how it was described is like, yeah, you throw them and they rattle on the ground and it echoes throughout the cave. And even just giving a description like that, I think makes players a lot happier. It makes them feel like they actually did something.
Yeah.
And obviously,
like, maybe I should think about what I tell the DM I do.
yeah, exactly. And obviously that's like the minor, but if they're trying to if you make their choices in conversation or whatever, if they're rude to a person, well, that person is now going to treat them as if they were rude to them. You
Yeah.
know, if they just any choice the players make, just try to roll with it. Try to give them something for it, even if it's something minor. It's still going to make them feel like they have a stake in the world.
Yeah, I know we talked about it in our NPC video as well. It feels like the choices. I mean, obviously the environment can be a big part of that too, but it feels like relational consequences, like with NPCs, that's kind of like really gets to be the heart of it.
Yeah.
I know in the Dragon of Icespire Peak playthrough that we're doing, it's at least in the beginning of the adventure, you're just kind of like, yeah, you're done. You're gonna come to Phandalin. No, you're gonna come to Phandalin. Like, it was like everybody just moves to Phandalin, and there were parts in that game where that you're just kind of, I kind of was like, okay, well, Adabra needs a new place to stay, so she's working on getting a place built and her shop set up there. And I feel like it's kind of small, which actually kind of ties in a little bit to my next point is, published adventures can definitely have a way of making the DM feel like the DM actually can feel railroaded at that point, which is something almost like a foreign concept. But sometimes you have to realize that even in a published adventure, and published adventures will even say this, like, this is still your deal. Like, you can run with it. Actually, I'm just reading a thing, because we're at this point we're actually are playing Stormlord's Wrath, something to look forward to. And it was just saying, like, it gave me a table to choose from some things that I could do to you, and then it says, or anything else you think is fun. It just even says that. I was like, all right, no, that's cool. We gave a few examples, and
I think it's important for them to note that too, because so many people read it and they're like, all right, this is the script, I have to stick exactly to that. And I definitely feel that too with the published adventures, like, because it almost feels like you're running a published adventure, you want to do it like right, so you're like, okay, I have to do this right, we can do it by the book. But it's like, no, at the end of the day, it's not your story. This is about the players, this is about the player characters, this is their story. So if they want to do something and it's out of the book, even if you have to tell them, like, hey, I didn't plan for this, so either you're gonna have to give me like 10 minutes just to figure out exactly what this is, or if it's towards the end of the session, be like, maybe we'll end a little early and I'll have this ready for next session. Yeah, I think it's a give and take. If the players are doing something that like derails what's going on, I think it's fine in most cases. Obviously there are extreme circumstances where it's not okay, but in most cases it's fine. But there has to be that that they can't just expect you to have everything ready too. There's some leeway that you each give each other. You're not going to make them do everything that you had written down on the page, but they're not going to expect you, or hopefully they're not going to expect you to have every single outcome for every single thing in your head.
Yeah, you're still human. Yeah. And actually, just when you were kind of talking about going off script, I can think of a famous movie scene where the actor just did one very subtle thing different, and the director was like, that's it. So when Han Solo is being lowered to be frozen in carbonite, Princess Leia says, "I love you." And the line he was supposed to say was something to the effect of, "And I love you," or "I love you too." And instead, one of the most iconic Star Wars lines of all time, he just looks at the camera and says, "I know." And sometimes going off the script produces moments like that are genuine. And in this case, Harrison Ford kind of is the player and the script is the DM, and they're just like, oh, let's roll with that. That fits Han Solo better. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've ever done this in any of the games we've played at together, but like I feel like you always see everything on the internet, but you always see the people the DMs who are like, no, your character wouldn't do that, like something like that. You're like, yeah, whose character is it?
Like, that you keep bringing me to the points that I had, because I was going to say, what is some what does poor player agency look like? And I think one of the things, unless there's like a magical effect of some kind telling, and I noticed this is actually a bad habit of mine. I've noticed I sometimes will say, "Oh yeah, you feel like a sense of peace in such and such," or you know, almost like I'm trying to set the scene, like, "Oh, you see warm sunsets," and it's just like, well, maybe my character hates the sun. Maybe I'm just, I mean, I look kind of pale. Maybe that's just the way I roll.
I've thought about this before because I do that too as a DM. I mean, I wouldn't. There's certain things like I wouldn't say, like I wouldn't be like, you're mad at him, you feel anger towards this person, like anything like that. Yeah. But at like a scenery or something, I think just changing a couple words with like what you're just saying, like you feel peace. Maybe it's like this looks peaceful to you or something like that. Like instead of saying you're inspired by this, be like, oh, it's an awe-inspiring view or something like that. It would inspire someone.
Sure.
But to be completely honest, yes, it's more subtle. But to be completely honest, it doesn't really bother me when DMs say like, it gives you a feeling of peace. Because as a player character, this is my personal opinion. I know people feel the opposite way. But as a player character, I could just say, okay, yeah, maybe he had that feeling of peace in his head, but he just completely rejected that. Be like, I should feel peaceful sitting at this waterfall. I should, and that's what you told me, is that this is what I should feel. There's something else going on. My character does not feel that at this moment. I don't think you telling me that changes it, but I think there are situations where people are like, yeah, you're angry at him, like stuff.
You
like
just saw your father, who you haven't seen in 30 years.
You're sad. Your character's crying. It's like, no, he's not.
Can I handle my own business, please? Sometimes I feel like player agency, it's definitely an issue of trust between the DM and the players, right? So I had a situation where, and if you read the article on Mulehorn Gaming that I wrote, this is going to be, this kind of goes back and forth at that, where the players were faced with a situation where one of the players got infected or cursed with lycanthropy in a fight, but there were two other people that needed cures, and no one in the party could cast remove curse, but there was one spell scroll that had it. And so at that point I was like, I'm just gonna wait till they do something. Sometimes as a DM you could be like, let me just fix everything, I'll just change their diapers, give them a little pat on the tush, and I'll make everything nice and neat. And after a good 10-15 minutes or so, maybe of them kind of discussing it, arguing in character about who should get the cure, one of the players did something brilliant. Actually, it was Matt. He prayed to the tree that they were, they learned that it had some powers and whatnot. And I was like, all right, that's really creative. And now I feel like at that point I had a decision point as a DM to just like deliberately go, no, that's silly. I'm not going to do that. I didn't anticipate it, so no, you can't do that. That would be bad. That would be bad DMing. But I said, all right. I made him roll something. I don't remember what it was. Wisdom check or persuasion, whatever it was. And the result was high enough. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't like, when someone rolls something like, my result is 33. You're like, he succeeded. It wasn't anything like that. And so after just making it awkward for a minute or two, because I still want to have fun with the players once in a while, two more scrolls appeared after like a warm breeze. And I was like, that was a very creative solution. I didn't anticipate it at all. I feel like that was a fun way, just present a situation. You don't have to have a solution. That's the player's job.
I think that's the biggest thing, is just the situation, not the solution. Like when I think about our Evolar game and the prison, right? You guys will probably hear about this another time. But our really good friend Nooch was the DM, and basically we fought in an unwinnable battle and became prisoners in like an orc prison camp. And Jake's character was doing something else, but my character and he was in a different section. But my character and some other characters were there, and I'm sitting there like, how the heck are we gonna get out of this? Because there's like no way to get out of it. The thing that I came up with, and this is probably my proudest player moment,
it was great.
I just asked if I could start a riot in the prison camp, and well, it ended up happening, and that's kind of like there was just absolute chaos. It was one of the most fun things I've ever done in the game. And I asked Nooch later on, I was like, hey, like, this was literally the only plan I could come up with. There was no, in my mind, there was no good way to escape. We were remote, so like if we didn't overtake the enemy, they were like, it wouldn't matter because they would have just found us. Like,
oh yeah, we're deep in the cinders.
Yeah. It was like, what did you think of? How would we have gotten out of that? And he was like, nope, I don't know. I just kind of...
That was your problem to fix. And as a player, I mean, that's cool, but there's also an element of like, that's a little frightening. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
But being imprisoned is frightening.
Yeah.
So that's great.
And if he had some sort of plan for that, if he had something in mind and it's like, no, you're going to do this, then I wouldn't have been able to have that moment, which I'll never forget. That was like, what, 4 years ago? Something like that. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. It's like, those are the kind of experiences that you can give your players when you just kind of throw them into a situation and let them come up with the outcome. You don't have it planned out yourself. It's up to them to decide. They have their own agency for that.
All right, so another thing I think probably gets overlooked a lot when it comes to creating player agency would be putting agency in combat. You know, a lot of times I think when you think of the concept, you just think like, yep, I need to have a sandbox. I need to know this is my environment and the decisions and the players involved and all that stuff. But I think player agency exists in combat as well.
Yes, no, I totally agree in what you said. Just, like, I have terrain, I have my minis, I have, this, whatever, blah, 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 that's it. I feel like so often it's just, here's your combat, these bandits met you on the road, or these goblins met you on the road, whatever, go kill each other, and whatever side wins is the only side standing. That's not how combats have to end.
Wait, what?
You don't even necessarily have to get into combat. Like I think, except for in extreme cases, like if you're, I don't know, any extreme case. I'm not going to come up with an example. Except for in extreme cases where you're in some sort of war and the only answer is combat, which even then there's probably another answer. I'm going to let my players decide to do what they want to do. It doesn't mean that the enemy is not going to try to attack them. It might start off with an arrow coming out of the woods or something like that. But if they want to take their turn and try to talk to these people and try to, maybe work out a deal, maybe like they give up. I don't know. However they want to handle that. If they want to join forces, they want to pay them off, they want to do anything, I think they should have those options. Or even if they kill 3 out of the 4 bandits and they want to leave the 4th alive, why is the 4th gonna just attack them when they take their rope off? No.
And actually, I have to give 4th edition some credit to that, because any prepared adventure I'd seen out of 4th edition has, not only would have tactics sections between how to run encounters, but there'd also be like victory conditions in certain ways. Like if half of their team is done, they're like, yeah, I'm getting out of here. Like, this sucks.
Yeah. Not
everybody has to be dead on the ground. You don't have to be a murder hobo, Josh.
And what you just said too about 4th edition and like, if them are dead, maybe they run or something like that. That is like a whole nother video to get into that too, like a morale and the effects of going up against basically gods in combat as just a bandit on the road. Like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen if you make your if the one bandit makes his save from fireball, but the other one doesn't, and now their cart is completely destroyed, the one friend got incinerated? Is he gonna stand there and fight you with his +3 to attack with his short sword? Probably not. He's probably gonna run away or give up or something.
Yeah. I agree. I think having different goals in combat too, like I know you alluded to it, but I could just see combats maybe two or God forbid multiple sides, 2, 3, 4 sides. I mean, shoot, Lord of the Rings, Battle of the Five Armies. That was kind of a pretty iconic scene. It was The Hobbit, I know, but each with its own goal was to get the treasure, right? That was the deal. It wasn't the ring at that point. They had it, but they didn't know it. They wanted the treasure in the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's an artifact that multiple sides are just fighting over, and if someone gets the artifact, they're like, I don't care about killing someone else. I'll kill you to get the artifact, but
yeah. Why are they going to stay there after they got the artifact? Why aren't they going to just run away and completely ignore you? Then you have to get into the chase combat or the chase rules in the DMG, which is just no one ever uses. I think I've seen them used once.
Like, I know they honestly right now I'm like, I know they exist. I'd have to look them up if I were trying to run a chase scene.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're great, but they're just no one ever uses them, or they're rarely used.
They're there.
Or just try to like teleport out immediately, and that, I think that kind of connects with having well designed NPCs and NPCs with goals. If you know your NPCs goals, then you know how they're going to react even in combat. Like, they're going to have a goal for that combat. They're ruthless. They're going to try to kill all of you. If they just want this thing, they're going to take the thing. They're going to get the heck out of there.
Or if they're intelligent and they realize, well, I have the thing, but if I look around the battlefield, I realize that's the only advantage I have. I got to get out of here. You know?
You want to talk about player agency?
I mean, that is why we're here.
It's true.
The player agency? I don't know why I'm talking like this.
Oh, what's that strange Yankee accent, son? This here's Savannah.
You see here, no, you want to use the Savannah accent. It sort of just drips off the tongue like molasses.
Now do the Swedish chef.
Donut.
I hope you're recording that.